Hello out there, everybody. Manny here at Area 503. And I hope you all have been well since our last video.
I'm Wally Broecker,
Good morning.
professor of geochemistry at Columbia University. I've been called, because I believe in global warming, a junk scientist. So I've won every award you can win, and yet I'm a junk scientist because I believe that global warming is a very serious problem.
February was a sad month indeed for the climate change awareness community. Wally Broecker passed away at age 87. Today I just want to talk with you all a little bit about Wally's message and climate change in general. Let's go back to 1975. 1975 was a fine year. Some guy would start a company in his garage in California, and he would go on to be somewhat successful. The war in Vietnam would end, and an altogether new kind of war would start. A consumer war. Over in India, the Prime Minister had her election overturned by the High Court. She responded by declaring an emergency state, which gave her dictatorship powers for almost 2 years. The UK and the United States were both bouncing back after fuel shortages of the previous years. In the United States, people were having babies, working, and just trying to go about their lives. They were starting to relax a little bit. However, the haunting memory of the gas lines and the rationing was never far away. Wally Broecker, a geophysicist at Columbia, published a 4-page paper that will change the world. His paper was titled, "Climate Change: Are We on the Brink of a Pronounced Global Warming?" In his paper, Broecker states that if man-made dust is unimportant as a major cause of climate change, then a strong case can be made that the present cooling trend will, within a decade or so, give way to a pronounced warming induced by carbon dioxide. By analogy with similar events in the past, the natural climatic cooling, which since the 1940s has more than compensated for the carbon dioxide effect, will soon bottom out. Once this happens, the exponential rise in the atmospheric carbon dioxide content will tend to become a significant factor, and by early next century will have driven the mean planetary temperature beyond the limits experienced during the last 1,000 years. So in 1975, Broecker predicted that rising CO2 levels would increase the global temperature and it would lead to climate change. Let's just go ahead and take a look at some of the data. So here on the 10-year averages, you see the brief lull through the 50s, 60s, and 70s where there was a cooling period, and then a sharp rise from the 80s on through the current day. And on the chart for the record highs, you again see the brief lull through the 50s, 60s, and 70s with a steep climb afterwards, and from 2010 on, some pretty serious record high days. And just to look at it a different way, this graph represents global temperature change. And you'll see after the 70s how it starts to really start growing at an exponentially quick rate. This animation shows the global average temperature anomalies for about the last 100 years. And again you see a brief cooling period from the 50s through the 70s. And then from the 80s on, it just keeps getting warmer and warmer. Until finally, 2014 to 2018 are the hottest years yet. In 1975, Broecker accurately predicted rising CO2 levels would lead to a global temperature increase, and that this would have a negative impact on our climate. Wow. Well done, my friend. Well done. We're certainly going to miss you. Well, in honor of Wally, I think the least that we can do is at least talk about climate change a little bit. And one of the first things I noticed was this concentration of hotter air and hotter temperatures in the North Pole. And I wonder what all that is doing to our ice caps. Let's take a look at the Arctic Sea ice volume from 1979 to 2016. Well, so from 2000 on, it looks like the Arctic Sea ice volume has steadily shrank. Now, I'm truly not a meteorologist or a geophysicist, but it seems to me like the Arctic Circle and Antarctica are supposed to freeze up every year. They act as a kind of natural heat sink for the planet and help displace our heat. And if these two regions get too hot to actually freeze up every year, they're not going to be there the next year to displace that heat. And who really knows what effect this will have on the weather systems and the environment? It sure does seem to me that all over the world we're having some pretty strange weather these days.
Tell me about this polar vortex.
Well, you know, the thing is, it's actually always there, and it is an area of very cold air that's spinning around. Now, I'm going to use an analogy to explain what's happening in the US right now. Now, I mentioned that the polar vortex spins. It's a cold bubble of air that spins around really fast. Now, sometimes this polar vortex can get a little bit disrupted. It's not a perfect circle. It can sort of meander a little bit like a river. If it's a circle that's spinning around, that's what we've got over the northern poles and the southern poles, cold air spinning around.
The residents of Chicago, Illinois had a devastating winter in 2018. It seems clear to me that climate change is not a matter of politics, debate, or religion. It's a global matter that affects us all, and only all of us can change it. I personally feel like it is the responsibility of this generation to fix the social and economic problems that hinder any progress towards a change on a global level on the viewpoint of human activity-induced climate change. Well, folks, that's everything I got on Wally Broecker and the topic of climate change. I hope you all learned something today. I know I sure did. As always, this has been Manny at Area 503. And I wish you all the best until we meet again. and I am out of here to continue my search for universal truth.